This episode of WDW Today is being sponsored by touringplans.com. And when you're planning your trip to Walt Disney World and you're envisioning how the trip's going to go in your mind, you're seeing your family on Splash Mountain smiling, waving, and then the next moment you're picturing yourselves on the Tower of Terror and everyone's screaming and you get that great shot. But the one thing you don't picture in that trip that you're idealizing in your mind is waiting in lines. No one does. No one wants to wait in lines, right? Well, you know what? touringplans.com has the tools to help you make sure that your next trip to Walt Disney World is going to have none of that waiting. It's going to minimize the waiting in lines and allow you to maximize all that time of those perfect memories that Disney would love to make part of their PR campaign. Check them out right now at touringplans.com.
Bringing the world to your world, this is Walt Disney World Today. Here are Mike Scopa, Len Testa, Mike Newell, and your host, Matt Hochberg.
It's Monday, June 13th, 2011, and this is episode 889 of WDW Today. I'm Matt Hochberg of StudiosCentral.com. Showman today's show is Mike Scopa, a senior feature writer and blogger for allears.net. Welcome, Mike.
Come on, keep them coming. Keep them coming.
I have no idea.
Come on, keep them coming. Keep them coming.
Hint?
Hint? It's said by a big thing.
Henry's a big thing.
I got nothing.
Country Bears?
It's the tarantula in Tough to Be a Bug when they're putting
Oh, Chili.
Yeah.
Good old Chili.
Yeah.
Also joining us on today's show is Mike Newell of Mouse World Radio. Welcome to the show, Mike.
He got me on that one. I had no clue.
No, I had nothing. Sometimes I have like an inkling, like I've heard it. I don't know where it is. This was like a...
He could have pulled that out of a book and I would not have gotten it.
Also joining us on today's show is Henry Work, a developer for touringplans.com and host of the Beta Mouse podcast. Welcome to the show, Henry.
Thanks, Hochberg. How's it going?
Outstanding. Let me tell you something. We, Len's away on business. He's
Sabbatical.
visiting Disneyland Paris, but in his absence, we had your colleague Fred Hazelton on last week. Let me tell you, Fred set a pretty high precedent for you.
Can I just leave now? Should I just quit ahead? Canada always waits.
The only way you can top him is that you have to, of course, the obligatory Len Testa impersonation. Go.
We have internal ones. I don't know if we can share them with you.
So here's the thing.
So here's the thing, guys.
On today's show, we're going to be talking about attractions and even restaurants in Walt Disney World that we all love, but we can't help but think, it would make a lot more sense if they were somewhere else. It's not that we think that they're bad attractions or bad restaurants. It's just that, when you're thinking logically about some things, perhaps there's an attraction or a restaurant that you just think to yourself, it would make a lot more sense if this was in another land or another park altogether because, but for whatever reasons, they ended up in the park or land that they're in. So, that being said, let's get things started. And, Mr. Newell, Mike Newell, we're going to start with you.
Hate that.
Only because you were yelling at me for overmodulating.
Hate that. Well, you are. It could be, Mike, it could be anything. It could be a restaurant.
It can be a restaurant or any attraction, Mike. Anything that you think
is out of place.
Very well serve better in another theme park.
I'm going to start with saying that the electric umbrella, I think, would be better off in Tomorrowland where the Noodle station is.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, I like that.
Only because I have nothing else.
Well, of all the things to pull, you could have gone with a more cliched thing like Soarin'. Doesn't make any sense in Tomorrowland, in Future World, rather.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. That's true.
But that's a good choice. I like that idea. Scopa, what's your take on Electric Umbrella in moving to Tomorrowland?
I think the Electric Umbrella is one of those restaurants where it could serve in several places. I think Mike makes a good case for it. It sounds like something that should be in Tomorrowland. It's got that futuristic kind of name to it. So, yeah, I think that would work.
And I like the fact that it's all, it's got neon. And Tomorrowland in the Magic Kingdom sort of has that feel, neon, spacey feel. And I kind of think that neon feel over in Epcot is a little bit out of date. maybe in the 90s it worked better, but now I think that it would work better in the Magic Kingdom.
Well, I mean, here's the thing for me. It makes a lot of sense in 2011 because the Tomorrowland Noodle Station or whatever, Tomorrowland Terrace, I mean, it hasn't really been fully utilized in years now, right?
It's sad.
So it needs something.
Yeah.
And Electric Umbrella has played its course in Epcot. So I think it's kind of a case of, it would work for both locations. In Epcot, we'd potentially get something different and hopefully better as a replacement. And in Tomorrowland, it would be an improvement because it would be another permanent counter service location, which it could definitely use.
Which Tomorrowland definitely could use. You're right.
Yeah. What about you, Henry? What's something that for you that sticks out in your mind as something that would make a lot more sense perhaps somewhere else?
So certainly, O Canada can go at Animal Kingdom. Just kidding. So this is a really hard question, Scopa. I think there's lots of things that you got to think of things that are similar, right? So two that came to my mind are in the Land Pavilion at Epcot. That variations of those rides, the non-soaring rides, so Living with the Land and Circle of Life, could fit in Animal Kingdom somehow. But certainly the conservation stuff of the land definitely has parallels in Animal Kingdom. I think it totally works in the land. I don't think they should potentially move it, although on a previous episode I definitely agreed with you guys that they could upgrade the Circle of Life.
Yeah,
and that would be a pretty cost-effective plussing of that pavilion. Not that it's lacking in any foot traffic, or at least the pavilion is. So yeah, I think what really is missing in Animal Kingdom are like inside dark rides, and Living with the Land is mostly not a dark ride, but it's this slow-moving boat, experience. It talks about the wonders of what humans can do when they are ecologically sound, and so I don't know, maybe some kind of parallel with that in Animal Kingdom. That's all I got for now.
That makes sense. For me, one that makes more sense. I think this works in Disneyland, but it doesn't work in Disney World, and that's the Princess Tiana and Prince Naveen character meetings. Because in Disneyland, they're in
New Orleans Square.
New Orleans Square, and that makes perfect sense because they're from the movie set in New Orleans.
Right.
But in Disney World, in the Magic Kingdom, Princess Tiana is meeting guests in Liberty Square, which is set to be a Revolutionary time era, and whereas Princess Tiana is early 20th century New Orleans. So for that reason, I've always thought that meet and greet would make a lot more sense in Hollywood Studios, just because for the reason simply because Hollywood Studios has a more generic movie theme, which makes more sense. They can take an area of the park, theme it to that region, and make it work a lot better than Liberty Square, which, other than the fact they both, it's in the United States, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So that's one that I had. So yeah, what about you, Scopa? What's something on your list?
I have two, Matt. Okay. I thought one of you would jump on this one right away. One of them is obvious. One of them is not that obvious. The first one that's obvious is that the living sea should be in the Animal Kingdom. They really don't have any water stuff in the Animal Kingdom. Think about it. I mean, other than Kali River Rapids, do they really have anything?
Yeah, well, the Living Seas made sense when it was the Living Seas,
right?
Because it was kind of talking about a totally different aspect. Now it's more about the animals, and you're right, Mike. Now, given the theme, if you could, kind of lift up the entire pavilion and move it somewhere, I would agree. Animal Kingdom would make a lot more sense.
I think now it's more about Nemo. It's more about Pixar. I don't even think it's about animals anymore. They lost total focus of what it's supposed to have been.
Yeah, it's you have the Nemo things, obviously the big attraction. You still have like the manatees and the dolphins there, but it's about the animals. It's not about let me put it this way. It's not about what the Living Seas used to be about.
No, you're right.
Right.
The other one is kind of, I just thought of this one, and it's kind of there's a number of reasons why I'm going to go with this one, and that is that I would take the Beauty and the Beast stage show out of the studios, and I would put it in the France Pavilion in Epcot for two reasons. Number one, when you listen to the song Be Our Guest, there is one line that says, after all, this is France. So to me, that means maybe it should be in the French Pavilion. And the other reason why I think it should be there is that I think there's a need for more stage shows in in Epcot. So 2 reasons I would move that attraction to Epcot World Showcase.
I think it makes sense. Like for the exact logic that you used. Let me ask you this question. With the closing of Fantasyland, closing of Toontown Square in the Magic Kingdom, Tinkerbell has been kind of homeless. She was at Epcot for Flower and Garden this year, but more than likely she'll end up back in the Magic Kingdom. But where do you think Tinkerbell should go? Where it makes the most amount of sense for a Tinkerbell meet and greet of all the parks and all the lands?
Gotta be Fantasyland, Matt, because first off, you get Peter Pan's flight there, so you get that hook, you get that connection. So she's gotta stay there. I think she's one of those staples of the Disney legacy that comes from Fantasyland. Plus, for those of us who grew up with Disneyland on television, she kind of she always seems to stick to Fantasyland. So I don't think you can make any argument for any place other than Fantasyland and the Magic Kingdom, or at least the Magic Kingdom.
I think she was, Henry, am I right that she was kicked, that she was, originally there was Pixie Hollow in the Fantasyland expansion, and then when they retooled it to make it less girly, Pixie Hollow was kicked out. Am I right about that?
Yeah, they definitely said Pixie Hollow was coming to Fantasyland expansion, and then later the plans were updated. They didn't exactly explain why, but the scuttlebutt on the internet is a crazy place, says that it's because Tinkerbell hasn't been testing as well, or potentially is her popularity peaked, a couple years ago, maybe.
Right. That's it. Okay. I mean,
but they're on to like the 4th or 5th movie now, Tinkerbell, like straight to DVD. So clearly it's still working, just not to the same level.
Yeah, I remember when Tinkerbell merchandise was everywhere, sort of like how Duffy is everywhere now, and before that you had like Hannah Montana everywhere, and it goes in those phases. But I remember when Tinkerbell was huge, a lot bigger than they are today. Henry, you said you had another one?
Yeah, so Tomorrowland in Magic Kingdom, I think, is always kind of interesting because there's some stuff, I don't know, there's some stuff that sort of feels very future-y. I don't think that's a word, but let's just go with it. But some other things that don't. Like, I think the Indy Speedways, or the Tomorrowland Speedway, is clearly doesn't really make much sense in the
a misnomer.
Tomorrowland. Yeah, so maybe moving that to the Test Track Pavilion somehow. Test Track is a pretty intense ride, and obviously the next door mission spaces as well. And really, that whole side of Epcot has very little to do for the kiddies, except in the post show and mission space a little bit. But yeah, maybe having some kind of drive your own car for the kids kind of experience. I think they could, it sort of fits with the whole sort of motion theme of the pavilion that's dated back to Epcot opening.
Right. I agree. I mean, the Tomorrowland Speedway has always been an attraction that, it's like, okay, I kind of see a lot of connections, but how does driving cars...
And that would free up so much space.
Right.
It's so big. So...
I would agree with that. I mean, it makes sense to, move that one out there for a couple different reasons that you listed. Let me ask you that. Newell mentioned at the top of the show restaurants, and that got me thinking, what are some other restaurants that make some sense to... Someone making tea?
Yeah.
Sorry, those are my running medals.
What are some other restaurants that make sense, perhaps in a different location than where they are currently?
Well, I think right off the bat, Mike talked about replacing the Noodle Station with Electric Umbrella. Maybe you move the Noodle Station to Epcot, to either
Japan or China.
Japan
What
or
about China?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, their counter service is so bad. I mean, it'd be great to have, or I guess Japan makes more sense. It's probably more of they're more heavy on noodles than China is. But yeah, I would agree with that. I like that idea, Mike.
What do you think about Tony's Town Square moving over to Italy?
Or
I think they should just blow it up.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay.
I mean, here's the thing with the Magic Kingdom, right? I mean, I think the biggest complaint is that the lack of dining variety in the Magic Kingdom. So, I mean, it's hard for me. I would hope that they would blow it up and just try it again, something different, because obviously we don't want to have just burgers and hot dogs as the only options you have in the Magic Kingdom. But yeah, I would agree that it doesn't make a lot of sense in there. You see, my biggest problem with Tony's Town Square, Mike, is that the theme isn't even that that much there. I mean, other than like the statue when you walk in and the cheap Italian tablecloths, the checkerboard style, like it doesn't really. I've never felt like he really evoked the feeling that like, wow, we're in the same restaurant as the movie.
Do you feel that
they could? Sorry, they could make a killing off of that location if they just rethemed it to a like a Waltz style restaurant. So in Disneyland Paris, they have a Main Street restaurant. It's actually the second floor, and each room of the restaurant is themed to a different Disneyland land. And it's really cool atmosphere, really good food, and actually. Coming up, they're having a restaurant in the Disneyland Hotel. They've had this steakhouse that's existed for a long time. Currently, it's called Steakhouse 55, and it had a name before that, but they're retheming it soon to just be called Waltz Steakhouse. So, Walt Disney World needs a restaurant called Waltz. It needs to keep up with the theme parks worldwide.
If they were going to do that, Henry, do you think they'd have to just almost wipe out some of the Disney Inner stuff in that building and expand that restaurant, because there's really only one dining room, and unless they took various parts of that dining room and sort of made it maybe they need to make something like, although this would be something probably for the studio, something maybe an artist's palette in the parks.
That'd be interesting.
I'm surprised they never put a Club 33 in the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not sure why why not? I mean, why they wouldn't have done that? Because you'd think that it would. I mean, obviously, there's the. I don't know if it's confirmed. I mean, the rumors that there's like a crazy long wait list to be a member in Disneyland. One would think they'd be able to fill the ranks of a Disney World copy over here.
Yeah, the wait list is actually closed in Disneyland. I think maybe one issue was, at least originally, that they didn't think they had the amount of locals. Pretty much all the Club 33 members are locals who live, who can just go to the parks, whenever.
Right.
So that maybe that they couldn't, get the same number of crazy tourists to sign up for it. So
especially, it would make a lot more sense these days because Disney's seeming to be going after the a more affluent clientele, right? I mean, they're definitely
Nook, baby.
Yeah. I mean, like we see, like in the Contemporary Resort with the those new health and wellness rooms that they're creating. I mean, they're not. They won't admit that they're going after it, but obviously those rooms are not going to be value rooms by any stretch of the imagination. They're they're going to cost a pretty penny, but then again, that's the kind of group of people, for better or worse, that Disney World is trying to attract these days. People who are spending a lot of money on property all over the place. So yeah, I mean, a Club 33 in Disney World or something like that would make a lot of sense, I think, given their current strategy, I should say.
I've got one quick more.
Yeah, go ahead.
I always think I'm not a huge fan of Magic Kingdom counter service food, and we already talked about the noodle station and stuff, or whatever they're calling it now. But I'm the one that disappoints me probably the most is the Pinocchio Village House. It's pretty old. I don't think the menu is particularly interesting. It seems sort of very generic food. I think Pinocchio is Italian, or at least that's what Wikipedia is telling me right now.
Isn't he German?
Okay, so that's a good question. So apparently in Wikipedia it said Geppetto is a wood carver named Geppetto in a small village in Italy.
Really?
So, let's say if it's German, maybe just move it to Epcot World Showcase, whichever country it's supposed to fit in.
It's supposed to be Italy.
And then
based on the guy who wrote the book, Carlo Collodi, I think he's Italian.
Yeah.
I go on record.
Yeah.
Based on that name, I think he's Italian. I think it's safe. All right.
Right. No, but I thought it was German too. Maybe it's just like what they wear in the.
He's wearing Lederhosen, isn't he?
Right. Yeah. So maybe they're traveling. Maybe it's a traveling thing. But is there going to be new counter services in the Fantasyland expansion?
I know they've got Gaston's Tavern. I think will be counter service.
They've got the Beer Guest Restaurant. Is that I can't remember if that's like table or table conversion table.
I thought that Gaston. I thought that was going to be counter service during the day and sit down at night. I thought that was the new
Beer Guest Restaurant.
I think that was the new progressive way of putting together restaurants in Disney World. I thought that was what they were trying to do, like counter service during the day and table service at night. That's what I thought.
Right. So I would just go with, there's so many Disney classics to go with. That building seems ripe for an uplift.
Yeah, it makes sense. According to the Disney food blog, good old AJ there. Also, the new scene is Gaston's Tavern, which looks like it might be counter service or a less expensive table service location. So, yeah, makes sense that that's going to be the case there. All right, last, anyone else got any other ideas for things that should be somewhere else?
I think you could make a few arguments in terms of Hollywood studios, just because, everything in all the theme parks has something to do with movies, or at least a fair amount of it does. And there's lots of movie themed stuff in the studios. I think Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid could definitely go into Magic Kingdom potentially.
You could send Monsters Inc. Laughlore to the studios in return,
right?
And a player to be named later. Yeah.
I mean, if Toy Story ever gets like a proper land instead of just Pixar Place, that could go somewhere. Same thing with Star Tours. They always, there's always a rumor that somewhere they're going to build Lucas Land. So presumably it'll be in the studios, but in case of it's somewhere else.
Makes you think that if they're going to have Pixar Place, then you would think that every attraction that have a Pixar connection should be there. Stitch's Great Escape, Laugh Floor, Buzz.
Well, Stitch's, before you say the hate mail, Mike, Stitch is not Pixar. I just wanted to save you all the emails.
That's right. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying, though. Your point is valid, nonetheless.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of. I guess there's some instances where it makes sense. Like you mentioned at the top of the show, Mike Scopa, that Finding Nemo makes a lot more sense or at least the Seas with Nemo and Friends makes a lot more sense in Animal Kingdom. So there are some instances where I agree, but there are a lot more where I think it makes more sense for it to be in the studios, like the Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor. There's just sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but by and large, it probably makes a lot more sense for it to be in the studios, given the themes that they're doing. So, I mean, if there was a Pixar movie about turn of the century America, then it'll make a lot more sense in the Magic Kingdom. Obviously, it just got to make sense in terms of what the subject matter is. Just like the It's a Bug's Life, we all think makes a lot of sense in Animal Kingdom because it's about animals. So, yeah.
Oh, and we did talk about the Adventureland Animal Kingdom connection. Len was talking about that on that one show that he would remove Jungle Cruise.
Right.
That maybe something like that could go into a tamer but boat driven animal experience with real animals could go in Animal Kingdom. Maybe I think that's what they originally envisioned anyway. So a lot of things could probably be stuffed at Adventureland too that from Animal Kingdom.
Absolutely,
that's a great idea.
Awesome. Well, that's going to do it for us today. Don't forget, this episode of WDW Today has been sponsored by touringplans.com. And again, you're looking for great tools to help you plan that trip to Walt Disney World and make that next trip to Walt Disney World a lot easier on yourselves in terms of not having to wait in lines as long and getting the right information and knowing where to go, when, and where. Well, touringplans.com is your best resource for all that information. They've got great things just like the crowd calendar, which tell you which parks on which days to go and which not to go to. You've got Lines, which is a mobile wait time application for your smartphones. You've got obviously a plethora of touring plans for every conceivable situation. Small children in the afternoon in Animal Kingdom. There's one for that. So check out all the great tools they've got. Great blog as well. It's all over at touringplans.com. And also want to mention and remind all of our listeners that our next live show is June 26th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we are going to be having Deb Wills of allears.net on the show with us. You'll be able to call in and talk to Deb, a real bona fide Disney celebrity, unlike us, we're schmoes. But you get to talk to Deb. She'll be there, and it'll be a lot of fun. So definitely check that out. It's going to be on Sunday, June 26th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. All the details are at wdwtoday.com. If you want to find our older episodes, read our show notes, or send us your comments, you can, of course, visit us online at wdwtoday.com. For Len Testa, Mike Sopa, Mike Newell, and Henry Work, I'm Matt Hotchberg. We'll see you on the next show.
It's a piece of work.
I'm not a schmo.
Stupid Judy, stupid energy.
This has been a production of Mouse World Radio.